Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session in ABAP and CAP Mondays of DevToberFest. Today's session is developing and transforming your ABAP custom code for clean core in SAP S/4HANA. Our guest speakers are Olga and Thomas Fiedler. You can post your questions in the chat and it will be addressed there. So before we start, let me remind you to check the DevToberFest page in the SAP community to know about various activities to gain points. So with that, welcome Olga and Thomas, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Shilpa, and very warm welcome everybody to our session. Here in this session, you will learn how to develop and transform your ABAP custom code for clean core in SAP S/4HANA. I'm Olga Dolinskaya, Product Manager for ABAP Platform, and I'm here with Thomas. Thomas, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning also from my side. My name is Thomas Fiedler and I'm the product owner of the ABAP development tools and happy to show you some demos later on.
Okay, let's continue with the session. And the focus today is how to develop clean core ready in SAP S4 and transform your custom code for the clean core in SAP S/4HANA Private Edition and S/4HANA on-premise. In the S/4HANA public cloud, it's pretty easy because you develop their cloud ready per default, per definition. But let's see how you can do it also in S/4HANA private cloud and S/4HANA on-premise. So we start with the clean core with ABAP Cloud, and I think many of you already know this definition of the clean core. Clean core describes a system or landscape of systems which is close to standard as far as possible, meaning you can anytime adapt very quickly your system to the changing business requirements, or you can also very quickly implement the new capabilities. Clean core comes along with these well-known 5 technical dimensions, which you can see on the screen. But the focus of today's sessions is the extensibility and the custom code perspective. And the thing about the custom code is how to enable you to develop your code clearly separated from the SAP standard code. It was not possible in the past because there were no public APIs available, and therefore, in most cases, you have developed your code using the classic extension technologies in ABAP, like, for example, modifications, enhancements. You used everything in the system you could find, and therefore, you have developed custom extensions, which in some cases were not stable and were not so decoupled from the SAP standard. And this resulted in high adaptation and testing effort during upgrades because of this instability. And therefore, developing clean core is the clear to reach this clear separation of extensions and SAP code. Of course, ideally, to keep your system stable, you should avoid extensions as far as possible, or at least keep the amount of the custom code developed in this system very low. But nevertheless, if you still need extensions, you can now develop them in clear decoupled way by means of the public APIs, which we as SAP provide for you to clear separate your developments from the SAP standard code. And using these public APIs, using ABAP Cloud development model rules and the 3-tier extensibility, you can develop in a clean core way in your SAP S/4HANA Private Edition or on-premise as on stack directly in the system, as also on SAP Business Technology platform side by side. Let's see how you can do it. ABAP Cloud is probably nothing new for most of you. It's our new ABAP Cloud development model for building cloud-ready business applications, services, and extensions. ABAP Cloud comprises public APIs and extensions point from SAP, which allow you to reach the clear separation of your code and SAP standard code. You develop your business logic using cloud-optimized ABAP language, and for the data modeling and for using of embedded analytics in the system, you use core data services. ABAP RESTful application programming model is the programming model to use for implementation of your transactional scenarios. And as development environment, you use for smaller key user extensions, the key user based web tools. And for the implementation activities and ABAP development tasks, you use ABAP development tools for Eclipse. ABAP Cloud is Clean Core compliant by default and is available in all SAP S/4HANA products and also in SAP BTP ABAP environment. The 3D extensibility model is the central piece of developments in your ABAP, in your S/4HANA Private Cloud Edition and S/4HANA on-premise if you want to develop in a clean core way. And it happens as following. The tier 1 is clearly reserved for ABAP Cloud only developments. It means that you switch on your software component to ABAP for Cloud development language version, and everything that you develop inside of this tier is per definition cloud ready. If you're missing public API from SAP, you can make use of the tier 2 layer and cloud enable the missing the object which is not released from SAP. And the development rules in tier 2 are the same. So you use the ABAP for Cloud development language version. You use the ABAP Cloud development model, and for all the developments in tier 2, besides of the usage of actual unreleased SAP object. And the tier 3 is reserved for your classic ABAP development. And in this tier, you have all the developments which you have got, for example, in the system from the previous system conversion. And the clear target for this tier is to reduce its content. Therefore, we recommend to retire as much code as possible, retire unused custom code, which is not used in productively, or retire obsolete business logic, which you don't need anymore, or probably there is already replacement in new S/4HANA software for it. Or think about there can be probably use cases where you can renovate or innovate your existing classic code into direction of ABAP Cloud in tier 1. So the 3D extensibility model is also described in our ABAP extensibility guide, and this is a central piece to use in order to enable you to develop in clean core way inside of your S/4HANA system. So here at one glance, main principles of development with ABAP Cloud development model. You use only released APIs from the ABAP platform and SAP S/4HANA. The usage of released APIs is checked by ABAP compiler in tier 1. If you set the ABAP for Cloud development language version, then you will get the syntax error if you use, for example, unreleased ABAP language statement. You create your own custom APIs in the tier 2, and you use only released extension points, body, if you want to extend SAP standard objects. As already said, ABAP RESTful application programming model is the model of choice for your transactional scenarios, and you work with the SAP HANA database using CDAs, ABAP managed database procedures, and ABAP SQL. As development environment for ABAP development-related tasks, you use ABAP development tools for Eclipse, and the ABAP Test Cockpit is a central tool to ensure the governance of your ABAP Cloud-ready development and clean core development, and also to adapt ABAP Cloud. Here, at one glance, how you can control the usage of released APIs. In tier 1, it's pretty easy. You set up the language version to ABAP for Cloud development and the usage of released APIs and ABAP Cloud language statements is controlled via the ABAP language version by syntax check. You will get syntax error if you use, for example, data element which is not permitted, or you directly access to the table which is also not permitted. In tier 2 and tier 3, the ABAP Test Cockpit will control the development and usage of released APIs, because in these tiers you use the standard ABAP language version, and you cannot develop only using ABAP Cloud development model, and therefore ABAP Test Cockpit will help you and will report the errors if you use unreleased API. Here, at one glance, which support ABAP development tools offers to you directly in development tools, so you can work with so-called released object trees in Project Explorer and set up your own view on repository to see only released objects in the system. You can search for released APIs using ABAP search or ABAP or Open ABAP development object dialog, and you can also display the status of API directly in ABAP development tools, or also see the successor API in the properties of the related ABAP development object. And having said that, I would like to hand over to Thomas for a demo. He will show us how ABAP development tools supports you for ABAP Cloud development.
When I now create an attribute, then I directly see that I get a syntax error. The same applies when I, for example, create another variable, this one here. Then you only get a warning because this is deprecated, and you also will see that there is already a successor mentioned here, which you can use instead. So it's not only about checking the released objects. You will also get syntax errors when you're using obsolete ABAP statements. So for example, when I use this one here, then you will also see directly you get a syntax error. So it's not possible to use these obsolete statements anymore when you're using ABAP Cloud. The same check for the released APIs is also used when you're using your own API. So that means there is this sandbox-like development with the released APIs. So it's also true for your own APIs. For example, when I create a reference to one of my classes that I have already created. So I have here this one here. And then you will also see that you get a syntax error here, because this is also not permitted. And when I trigger, for example, the code completion here, you will see that there is a second class which I can use, and this usage is okay. So you also see that this released APIs are also used within the logic of the code completion. So you only see these classes which are released for the usage. And yeah, when I go to that class, you will also then see in the properties view again, when I click on it, that this class now is released for usage. And the other class, this one here, is not released. So I hope that you see how in principle this works. So having the ABAP language version on the one hand side, that you have this strict checks on the class, and on the other hand you have the release concept of APIs that you can use also to make use of your own APIs. And having said that, back to you, Aga.
Okay, thank you, Thomas, for this demo. Here, just one summary, how to find SAP public APIs. You can find them, as Thomas already showed you, directly in ABAP development tools for Eclipse. The public released APIs are also available on SAP Business Accelerator Hub or in the cloudification repository on the GitHub, whereby you can use also convenient cloudification repository viewer in order to browse the content of the available released APIs. And if you are missing released API, you can use the corresponding custom influence site to request it from the SAP directly. So if you are missing the release public APIs and you are ready to develop your own custom wrapper to wrap and release objects and release it for usage in tier 1, you can do it during your tier 2 development. And here in this tier, you develop your own custom wrappers. And the foundation for your custom wrapper development is the list of so-called classic APIs. So we from SAP provided and nominated a list of classic APIs, which are stable across S4HANA releases. This list is independent of the particular S4HANA release, and you can use it for your custom wrapper development. This list is available on the GitHub in the cloudification repository, and the usage of classic APIs in your code can be checked via the ABAP Test Cockpit. So if the usage of such classic API in your code is detected via ABAP Test Cockpit, the corresponding custom objects can be wrapped into direction of cloud readiness based on this classic API. And in order to speed up your custom wrapper development, you can also benefit from the custom wrapper generator, which we provide directly in the system, where you can generate your custom wrapper in a very quick way. For example, you know that BAPIs come along with very long signatures, and therefore, if you just use the custom wrapper, you put the name of the BAPI and put the name of the generated object, and you get it from scratch. If you have selected use cases which you would like to change into direction of ABAP Cloud to cloudify them, this is also possible, and the tool of choice is ABAP Development Tools for Eclipse and, of course, ABAP Test Cockpit. So you run ABAP Test Cockpit with ABAP Cloud Readiness Check variant over your custom code development. And then the first step would be to use the quick fixes to adapt your code to the usage of ABAP for Cloud Development Language version, because we provide also some quick fixes which offer automated support for you here. And the remaining part can be adapted based on the details information in ABAP Test Cockpit result. There you will see, for example, for the usage of unreleased API, which successor API is provided. For example, if you directly access the table, then you will see the successor API in order to successor CDS view in order to access this table. And you can use the successor API in order to adapt your code to ABAP Cloud. And if you're missing the released API, of course, you can anytime request it via the corresponding SAP custom influence site, as already mentioned, or you can develop your own custom wrappers. And having said that, I will hand over again to Thomas, who will show us the demo how to adapt your codes using the quick fixes and how to implement your custom wrappers.
All right. Okay, back to the development environment. What I have prepared to show you a little bit how you migrate existing codes towards ABAP Cloud. I have built a very small application. Please don't look on the details too much. It's just to explain it a little bit. A small self-service employee app where employees of a company can maintain their bank data. So it's quite easy. So you just enter your employee ID. And then you see, okay, what's your name and the first name and the last name. And then when you double click on there, you can enter the bank data. And then after you have entered this, there is a check executed who checks if this bank information is valid, and if not, you get this error here. So this is how this application is running. Looking on the implementation, so it's quite easy. It's based on an ABAP program, and the whole implementation is done within this ABAP class. And my task now is to look, okay, how can I migrate this towards ABAP Cloud? So the most important stuff, we already mentioned this, is that you really separate your developments from the SAP coding via released APIs. And you can imagine that, and you know this more or less from your own developments, that sometimes you're using objects directly from SAP without APIs, like for example, that we are doing here in that class that I can open here. I already triggered an ATC run on that class. I will show you in a second how this is done. Okay. Oops. I don't know what's happening now. Maybe, Olga, I give back to you for a second. Oh, no, now it's working. Now it's working. So here is my class. Sorry for this small interruption. Here is my class, and you already see that I get a lot of errors from the ATC because I'm using a lot of stuff which is not released. So for example, here I'm directly selecting data from that SAP database table. And I'm also using here some statements which I already explained in my first demonstration that this is not allowed anymore. And here for the check of the bank details, I'm using this old BAPI here, which is available in the system, which is also not, let's say, enabled for ABAP Cloud development. So this is more or less now the tasks. I'm not so focusing on the user interface. So for sure, also ABAP programs are not allowed in public cloud anymore. So we are using RAP and Fiori-based UIs. But in that demonstration, I only want to focus on the API part. That means I now have to go over these tasks that I mentioned. So the first thing is, Olga also mentioned this already in the presentation, that I have quick fixes in the ADT, so I can trigger them here, just marking all the ATC findings and triggering the recommended quick fixes here. And then you already see, okay, for most of the stuff concerning the restricted language scope, I have quick fixes available here. So all the move statements will be removed, and also the new SQL syntax will be applied, all these kind of things. So this is all done automatically, let's say. So you don't have to do this manually. But you also see that there are still other topics that you have to fix manually. Why? Because currently we do not support quick fixes, for example, for these kind of things. But stay tuned. I will explain later on what we have in mind to overcome this problem in the future. So this is one topic that I have to solve, but you also see here in the description that there is also some kind of a successor API available. So if you don't want to use the direct database access here, you can also use a release CDS view for that. So there's an iBusiness Partner CDS view, which is more or less doing exactly the same things here, but for sure by providing all the new capabilities of CDS views, that you also have associations and all these kind of things. So it's not only that you have to change this, you also will get a lot of benefits when using the new technologies here. So that's one topic. And yeah, this is what I already did before the presentation, so I don't have to type this. And I'm switching now to this business partner class, so it's more or less exactly the same class, but I did already most of the fixes already. That means I changed the access to the business partner. I changed all the data elements or the types that I want to use now. I'm directly using it from this CDS view. And the only thing which is still missing is the usage of this BAPI here. So there's no chance that that I can reuse that, because as I mentioned, this is not released, and there's also no successor information available, so no really a chance to overcome this problem. And now this is where this tier 2 comes into the picture. So you can remember tier 1, ABAP Cloud. Tier 2 is when you want to create your own APIs, and this I want to do now in that case. And yeah, so the idea is not that complicated. So you're just creating a new class, which more or less just triggers this function module here. So you just call this here, and then you can release this new class that you have created in your own namespace. And then with this release of that API, you can use it in your ABAP Cloud development. That's more or less, and this is also the reason why this notion of an API wrapper comes into play. In the meantime, we also have extended an already existing transaction that we have in the system since years already, which is normally used when you want to create a proxy class for an RFC function module. And this transaction is called ACO proxy. As I mentioned, it's not a new transaction, but we extended this transaction a little bit. That means, so for example, here you can enter the name of the function module that I had. And now you also see that these are the extensions that we did. So it's not only that you can create a class which wrap that. No, we also more or less recommend to also use an interface for that, and to then use a factory class in order to create an instance of that class by accessing via this interface. So this is new. And also then you see it here that you can already directly set the release date, that this generated API will then be later on released automatically. So it's quite easy to use. So you just enter the name more or less of the artifacts that you want to generate, and that's it. And then you will see how this will look like in my reuse library package, because usually these APIs that are generated here are reusable also by other implementations. So if some other in my company wants to use this wrapper, they can reuse that. And then you see how this will look like. So it's just an ABAP class that then just triggers these BAPI here. That's more or less the idea. For sure, have also defined an interface for that that you see here. When I click F2, you also see that all the types, more or less, that are part of that BAPI are also integrated as types in the interface, so that I have really the complete implementation in one hand, let's say. And that's how you are doing this. This is, as I said, only in these situations where you don't get a release API from SAP. It's chance here to wrap this functionality and use it in your development. That means when I now go back to my business partner implementation, I already have prepared this here, so I can comment this here out and put this in and save it. So that's more or less the last task that I did now. And now this class is ABAP Cloud compliant, means that I now can also switch the language version. This was not possible before because I then get a lot of syntax errors, but now I changed all these things, and then I can change also the language version. Now this class is ABAP Cloud compliant. That's more or less on the things that you have to do. So adapt the language version, adapt released APIs where possible or where available. And then last but not least, use the wrapper technology in order to create your own APIs in case you don't find an API from SAP. Having said that, back to you, Olga.
So before we continue, just a small remark. How to check your custom code for ABAP Cloud in the older system. For example, if you have S/4HANA system, which is on lower release as 2022, because as you know, in 2022 release, we have enabled developer extensibility, and you can develop with ABAP Cloud and check for released APIs. And if you have, for example, an older system as 2022 release, or you have ECC system, you can also check the system, how far is it actually from the clean core. And for this purpose, you use custom code migration app, and the custom code migration app needs this information about the released APIs, and it is provided then via the cloudification repository for corresponding release. And this is actually a good thing, because even if you, for example, in S/4HANA 2022 system, and you would like to check your code for released APIs in 2023, because we have released certainly more APIs in 2023 release, but in 2022 they are not available. They are available, but they are not released. You can check for them and start adapting your code in 2022 to usage of these APIs, because you know that in 2023 they are for sure released, and you can also proceed this way and adapt your code to ABAP Cloud, even in low releases, if you are looking and have the outlook that you will update your system to the new release. Okay, having said that, let's go over to another topic. We have talked about how to develop clean core ready inside of the system. And the next topic would be how to govern actually the rules of this clean core development, because the one thing is to establish these rules, to use ABAP Cloud development model as far as possible, but how to control that you develop extensions that are really clean core ready. And as already said, we have this three-tier development inside of private cloud edition or on-premise system. And to govern the development in tier 1 is pretty easy, because you switch the language version to ABAP for cloud development, and everything which you develop there is governed and checked by the ABAP compiler. So the syntax check will detect incompatibilities with ABAP Cloud development model and will signalize that you have error in your code and you need to correct it. But how to proceed with tier 2 and tier 3? Because in tier 2 and tier 3, it's impossible to set the language version to ABAP for cloud development, because in tier 2, you certainly have the code parts which have to deal with usage of unreleased SAP object, and therefore the language version must be standard ABAP. And in tier 3, anyway, you have your own classic development, and there the language version must be standard ABAP in order, because you need to do some classic developments there. And the tool of choice for clean core, to govern your clean core development, is ABAP Test Cockpit. ABAP Test Cockpit is our central tool for statistical quality assurance of your development landscapes. We use this tool during development process to run the custom code analysis check. You use this tool during system conversion process in order to convert your ECC system to S/4HANA. And this is also the central governance system for your clean core development. And the procedure is the same. You connect all your development systems in your landscape to the central ATC system, and set up the rules that block the priority 1 and 2 ABAP Test Cockpit findings from transport release. And you work with ABAP Cloud Development Default check variant. This is actually the check variant which we deliver for your development in clean core way in your S/4HANA system. And in addition, you need to include also the checks from the cloud readiness category, because these checks are essential for checking your tier 2 and tier 3 development, where you don't have ABAP for cloud development check language version. And you include all the checks from this cloud readiness category, which you see on the screenshot on the right-hand side. And starting with S/4HANA 2023, PS2, we deliver also pre-configured ABAP Cloud Development 3-tier check variant, where these checks are already included by default. And the idea is that you check with this new custom check variant containing the checks which are necessary for your development process with ABAP Cloud, and also the checks with cloud readiness to check the tier 2 and tier 3 developments, to ensure that the most of development takes place in ABAP Cloud development model. And for the cases where you really need to develop in classic ABAP, meaning, for example, you are in the tier 3 and you need to extend your DINPRO application, then you would need to use the classic ABAP development and you can apply for exemption. Also, if you start your development in this 3-tier landscape in S/4HANA system, probably in most cases you come from the system conversion and you have a lot of legacy code in your system. How to proceed with the whole legacy code with all the modifications which you have in the system, how to do it clean core ready. It's not necessary to adapt the whole code, and it's not possible to adapt the whole code to ABAP Cloud. The recommendation is here to work with the baseline. You run the ABAP Cloud readiness checks initial over your custom code and take all the findings into baseline. And this allows you to develop further on with ABAP Cloud, and the old findings in your classic old code will not prevent you from using ABAP Cloud development model. It means starting with the baseline, you start develop with ABAP Cloud development model, trying to do this in tier 2 and tier 3 as much as possible. And it's if you need really extensions, which is based on classic extensibility rules, then you work with exemptions. And here at one glance, for example, the exemptions and use cases in which you can apply for exemptions. For example, if you need to use an unreleased SAP object, for example, if you implement your own custom wrapper and need to use the unreleased function module or data element, you apply for exemption for usage of released API, but you can still develop the remaining part of the wrapper using ABAP Cloud development model. Or, for example, if you extend your existing DINPRO application and you need to use this UI legacy technology, then you would apply for exemption for ABAP language, but you can still try to use the released APIs inside of your implementation. And here again, if you need to use unreleased body, you would apply for exemption for usage of released API, but you can still develop in ABAP language for cloud development. So you try to develop in ABAP cloud development model as far as possible, and only for the cases where you need to use the classic technology, you apply for exemption. And if you use ATC exemption browser in the system, you can get the overview of all existing exemptions in the system, and you can estimate how far is actually the system from the ABAP Cloud, from the clean core, and your foundation is the amount of exemptions in the system. Having said this, our recommendation for ABAP Test Cockpit as a central governance tool is to use ABAP Test Cockpit on SAP BTP. ABAP Test Cockpit is now available on SAP BTP inside of SAP BTP ABAP environment, and it consists of a certain amount of Fiori apps, and it contains all the main features which you need actually to control your development. So you can check your custom code with various checks. You can consider collected usage data. You can implement your own custom checks and check variant with support. Also developer scenario, meaning you as developer in on-premise or private cloud system can use the central checks on from ATC on BTP. We have also the robust process there for handling of ATC exemptions. You apply as developer for exemption your ABAP development tools in Eclipse, and the quality expert processes the exemption in the corresponding ATC exemption app on BTP. You can, this is also one new feature which we have delivered. You can work with the baseline, so you can set up the initial baseline for legacy findings in your code. You can schedule ATC check runs and so on. So if you take here the look how the custom code analysis with ATC looks like on premise in comparison to ATC on BTP, Of course, it's not possible to rebuild all the features which SAP GUI-based ATC provides, but nevertheless, you have the most important features in place, and therefore you can use ATC on BTP. So you have always new checks there, you have always up-to-date new system, you don't need to take care of maintenance tasks, you don't need to take care of upgrading such a system. It's always there, new, up-to-date, at your disposal with the newest checks. So clear recommendation is to use ATC on BTP. And having said this, I will hand over again to Thomas, who will show you the demo, how to govern your clean code development with ATC on BTP. And in the end, Thomas will tell you also about the new developments which are taking now place in the lab.
All right. So here you see already the ATC in cloud that I have set up already. So this is a normal ABAP environment in SAP BTP system. Everything is already pre-configured. So the only thing that I have to do as a customer is for sure to connect the system towards my on-premise system or my system in the private cloud. But then that's more or less the only thing. All the other things like the variants and all these kind of things is already pre-configured. And also the benefit clear you have in the latest version of all the checks, latest version of the infrastructure, all these kind of things. So you can just use it without any upgrades or installation, things like that. So it's just there for you to use. I already have configured one ATC run over my employee app that I already have used in the last demo. And there you see, okay, I have still these findings open, so it's more or less exactly the same what you have seen in the second demo. But now really a check which is executed on the SAP BTP remotely against my private cloud system. And there you also see all the findings that you will get for the usage of released APIs or the language version and all these kind of things. So all this kind of information is now also available. And when it comes to governance, this also means, for example, that you are not just using the ATC at transport level. No, you also want to have some kind of an overview about your system overall. That means what is also nice now that you can, for example, when you have created these ATC run, let's say, that you can also schedule this, that you can, for example, say, okay, via this app here, via the schedule custom code analysis app, that I say, okay, I want to have a check over my system on, let's say, every weekend, let's say, that I can see then on the Monday, okay, what's now my status of the system? How far am I concerning ABAP Cloud usage, all this kind of things. So this is a rather new feature which is available there and that you can also use. So it's quite similar, just set a date when this check run should be executed, and then we'll see the results once this run is done. Going now back to my development environment. Here again, now I don't want to focus on that class that I already have switched to ABAP Cloud. No, now I want to more or less go into the objects that I cannot maintain ABAP Cloud-like. So this report I already mentioned to you. The main focus concerning ABAP Cloud for legacy coding, which I have with that, is not really now to go over and every program and re-implement this via the new technologies. No, for sure you can do that. So in order you say, okay, I want to have some kind of a nicer UI, maybe I want to make this UI available on the mobile device and things like that, then you can for sure do this. But the most important topic is really this adoption of the released APIs. And this definitely makes no sense for all kind of Dunpro-like development programs where you, as in our example, using the ALV grid, because these are all APIs which are not released for cloud development. Why? Because this technology is not available in the public cloud. So it makes no sense to use an ALV when you can anyhow do not display Dunpro-like UIs in the user interface. Therefore, as Olga mentioned, we in order to make this developments already transportable, because when you have ATC errors and you're blocking the transports, you were not able to release these kind of things anymore, which is, I think, not a good idea, because you want to ship this to your users in the production system. And therefore, the idea is to use exemptions for that. So I can just right-click on such a finding here, because as I already mentioned, in that case, it makes no sense here to get a syntax error, for example, for all the an ATC error for all the usages of ALV table, because these are all APIs that are more or less stable. So you can still use them, for sure not in ABAP Cloud, but for private cloud in tier 3 development, as we call it, it's okay to use that. That means you're just creating an exemption from here, request exemption. So in that case, I want to apply this for all the findings of that program. And I also want to do this for the whole check. Okay, reason is other reason, tier 3 development. Say finish. And that's more or less all that the developer has to do. Now I'm switching the role and I'm phoning my quality manager, explaining him why I need this tier 3 developments here in that case, that he can approve that ATC exemption. So I go now to the also the new feature to the exemption browser. And I can display all the exemptions of the system. You see that I have already created some exemptions beforehand. And now here also this new one here for this 3-tier development. I don't want to have this findings for the release of our platform APIs anymore, so ALV grid and all the other kind of things, because I need this in my program that I have developed. And yeah, just want to exempt that or approve the exemption. So that's quite easy. I just click the approve button and that's it. You will also see that this then changed here in the overview. So that also means what we also had on the slide. So this is also one part of this governance, that I not only check where do I already apply to the rules of ABAP Cloud. Now I can also see here where do I have exemptions for that. So you can also have some kind of a very good overview about the usage of ABAP Cloud in your system. Going back to the development environment now, the exemption is approved. I can do a recheck here. This will take now a while. In the meantime, I can show you maybe how this ATC variant is set up, because this is now, I'm going now into the development environment against the BTP ABAP system, because the variants are maintained in Eclipse. This is now a development object. Not like before in the code inspector, so that's different in the cloud development. So this is the editor for that, and you see the main checks are this cloud readiness here, and here for this released APIs, I have chosen the variant where I get the objects from a GitHub repository. Why is this necessary? Because we only ship the content of the released APIs to customers, but not for this, we call it classic APIs. So the BAPs and all the other objects which are in the system, they will be maintained in a GitHub repository, and there you have to maintain the URL to that file on the GitHub repository. I can also show this to you. So this is the GitHub repository where this information is maintained. So it's under our control. And when you go to the source file here, you have this object classification files where you find all the information about the BAPs and all the other APIs which you can use in, as for example, in a wrapper that I have shown in the demo, that you can wrap this functionality, and all these objects that can be used in tier 2 are here specified in this file here. That's maybe not so nice to read through it, so it's okay for the ATC, but when you want to really, as an end user, you want to have this information, then we also provide on the same GitHub repository such a small browser UI where you can easily find the objects here. When I, for example, I had this BAPI that I had, and then you directly find it here. This was exactly the BAPI that I'm using in my application, and you see that this is here classified, and so that's somehow from SAP specified that you can use these things in your developments. Looking back to ADT, the ADT check run is in the meantime over, and you also see, okay, that now all the errors concerning the usage of released APIs are gone here. One small remark, you see also here, this is still one finding because yeah, for sure it's just a demo case here, so I missed to implement an authority check for that report. But it's also good to know that when using the ATC in the BTP, you also get the possibility to execute the security checks on that environment, and this is also executed then on your coding on the on-premise side. That means it's also now one of the benefits that you get the full scope of checks, and you don't have to pay an extra license to use the security checks, as you may know from the on-premise developments. So that's more or less what I wanted to show concerning the governance model. So you've seen how you can use ATC in cloud, how you can set up ATC runs, maybe execute them once a week to see, okay, how do you improve concerning the usage of APIs, and how can you also use the exemptions in order to manage more or less the stuff in tier 3 development. For sure, when you have a lot of custom code, a lot of legacy coding in your system, maybe you don't want to use the exemptions. So you maybe want to start with a baseline. So this is also a new feature in the ABAP Test Cockpit in SAP BTP, where you can just trigger an ATC run on all your legacy code and put all the findings within a baseline. So this is also possible as a good starting point. Having said that, I will now go back to the slides. Where are we? We are here. All right. So this was now this demo. And you've seen that maybe the development in tier 3 is not that easy, because the main task that you have to do is to have to find, let's say, these APIs, which are, let's say, more or less not critical for the usage. So all the ALV things or other functionality that you anyhow use since years. But you also have to take care that also in tier 3 development, we do not recommend now to do all the freestyle ABAP developments again. So don't use modifications and things like that. So it's not that you don't have any kind of guidance concerning the tier 3 development. But currently the problem is that we also see this from customers when they're using the ABAP Test Cockpit with the cloud readiness, that you get a lot of ATC findings here, and you don't really see the things that you really have to adapt. So the things where, for example, in our example, where we had this direct access to a database table, which you should definitely change, because there are better things available in the system with the released APIs. But you can definitely not, let's say, re-implement an ALV grid based report with modern technologies, with input technologies, because all these kind of things are not available in ABAP Cloud. And therefore, what we think about is, why not provide a little bit more guidance for our customers how they should develop in tier 3. And with that, we had the idea to extend the already available concept of classic APIs, so which is currently only a recommendation for tier 2 development as the wrapper. But I think you can imagine wrapping an ALV grid does not make sense. So now we also explicitly think about, okay, why not also specify these classic APIs for tier 3 development, that you can then see which one of these APIs from SAP are okay to use, and which are let's say bad APIs, which I should definitely not use in my custom code. And that's basically the idea. After we have provided this, we also want to adjust the ATC check at all. That means that you only get ATC errors for the really for the usage of the really bad APIs, which are really not recommended from our side. And our hope is that we will get all these development then in tier 3 a little bit more realistic, let's say, because going through millions of ATC findings will definitely not help in order to find, okay, where can I really improve my coding when I don't want to really modernize that thing. I want to stay it in a Dunpro-like application. But then I have here now a clear guidance from SAP what are the good APIs and what are the bad APIs. So that's basically it. We're targeting for have this thing available until end of this year. So there will be then this additional classic APIs on the GitHub available, and there will be also this adjustments of the ATC check. Now something completely different. I already mentioned that at the beginning that we do not offer that much quick fixes, but now we also try to use AI for this transform use case. So not only that you have AI for the development use case, but also for the transformation. That means our vision here is to really integrate in our Joule ABAP capabilities also some kind of a co-pilot which you can use in order to migrate your coding concerning S4HANA or Clean Core. That means you can imagine that there's some kind of a friend that you know which knows everything about S4HANA and Clean Core, and you can just ask them, okay, what's the issue of that finding in the ATC, and then you get an explanation what you have to do, also integrated here with code proposals, for example, that you can just easily take over in your development environment. And this all is integrated with all the ABAP Joule capabilities in ADT. So also, for example, explain functionality or other things that you may see in the AI sessions for ABAP here, also in Devtoberfest, that you get code completions, code proposals during development, all these kind of things. And this will then overall really helps also in your integration or in your migration projects concerning Clean Core. As I've said, this is only, let's say, the target where we want to go. This is definitely not something that we ship with the first wave of AI capabilities in ADT, which comes in February next year. So this will come a little bit later, but I'm quite optimistic because we already have some POCs running in our lab, and it looks already good that we can already provide some of these use cases in the range of next year. All right, having said that, this was it already for the session of today. I want to say thank you for listening to that session, and yeah, have fun with ABAP Cloud development. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga and Thomas, for another interesting session. We had some good discussions in the chat as well. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you have more questions, drop it in the comments of the community event page. And the validation tutorials about this session will be available by the end of the day. Slides and other important links will be updated in the community event page as well as in the description of this YouTube video link. Thank you, everyone, and see you in the next session. Thank you.